In the heart of Umutata, where whispers wove like vines through the thatched roofs, Adanna's world had begun to unravel. Father Burko, once draped in the vestments of his faith, now wore the traditional garb of his ancestors, a vibrant Kent cloth that seemed to carry the weight of his choices. His decision to step down as a priest had stirred the village into a cauldron of rumors and retribution, no longer shielded by the sanctity of his former vows. Without support and donations from the villagers, his promise to take Adanna from the village seemed like wishful thinking. One sweltering evening, as the sun set with a fiery promise, Chief Okoro convened a secretive meeting in his hut, the walls lined with the spears and shields of his forefathers. Burko thinks he can simply cast aside his robe and walk away? Not while I draw breath, Okoro muttered, his voice a low growl. He must be shamed, broken. As if summoned by the chief's dark intent, a woman appeared in Umutata the very next day, her presence a sudden storm cloud over the village's dusty paths. Clutching the hands of a small child, while in her arms a baby looks longingly at his surrounding, she made her way straight to the communal well where Adanna fetched water each morning. "Excuse me," the woman's voice trembled as she approached Adanna. "Are you familiar with Burko?" Before Adanna could reply, she was hit with words that pierced her heart. He is the father of my children." Adanna's bucket crashed to the ground, water seeping into the earth as her heart thudded wildly. "There must be some mistake," she stammered, her eyes darting between the children, seeking any trace of Burko in their features. Meanwhile, Father Burko, unaware of the storm brewing, met with a senior father, a man whose wisdom was often sought but seldom heeded in these troubled times. "Burko, the village speaks of nothing but your past deeds," the elder said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "They whisper of women and children, secrets you've kept buried." "These are lies crafted to break me," Burko replied, his fists clenched. "I have made many mistakes, but this is not my doing." That night, Adanna's sleep was haunted by visions of three shadowy figures chasing her through the endless rows of maize, their faces obscured by the dark. She awoke with a start, her skin slick with sweat, her heart pounding against her ribs like drumbeats in the night. "Adanna, we need to talk," Father Burko's voice cut through the early morning haze. He stood at the doorway, the lines on his face deeper than she remembered. "I know about the woman, the children," Adanna said, her voice barely a whisper. "How could you?" "Adanna, I swear on my life they are not mine. This is Chief Okoro's doing, a ploy to drive a wedge between us," Burko pleaded, his eyes searching hers for shards of trust. "How can I believe you, Burko? After I have given you my heart, how?" Adanna's words were a mix of anger and anguish. "Just trust me. Let me prove my innocence," Burko urged, his hand reaching out to her. Reluctantly, Adanna nodded, with doubt and fear in her heart, her dreams still echoing in her mind, a foreboding omen of the deception that might still lie ahead. As days turned into nights and nights back into days, the village of Umutata watched and waited. With each passing moment, the web of lies, deception, and mystery drew tighter around Adanna and Burko, threatening to suffocate their love with the harsh vines of tradition and treachery. But beneath the whispers and shadows, truth, as it always does, began to stir, ready to emerge like the first rays of dawn over the horizon of Umutata. Amidst the turmoil and trepidation that enshrouded her waking hours, Adanna found an unexpected sanctuary within her dreams. One night, the recurring vision of the three menacing figures pursuing her transformed dramatically. Instead of the oppressive fear that usually gripped her heart, a strange serenity washed over her as she ran from her pursuers. As the men gained ground, the earth beneath Adanna's feet seemed to falter, and in an inexplicable burst of euphoria, she felt herself being lifted off the ground. Her body, light as a feather, soared upwards into the brilliant azure sky, leaving the baffled figures dwindling into specks below. The air around her was crisp and invigorating, as she glided over Umutata's lush expanse. Below her, the dense canopy of the forest was a tapestry of vibrant greens, punctuated by the meandering silver of rivers and streams that slithered through the landscape like living entities. The hills rolled gently at first, then rose into rugged valleys and imposing mountains, each breath she took filled with the pure, cool air of freedom. Adanna flew higher, the warmth of the sun enveloping her as she ascended toward a majestic mountain that pierced the heavens. Landing softly on its summit, she felt a profound sense of peace, as if she had transcended the earthly binds of her troubled life. From this vantage point, the world seemed smaller, the problems less insurmountable. She stood there, on the peak, the wind whispering secrets only meant for her, tales of strength and new beginnings. The dream shifted her perspective, infusing her with a newfound resolve to face the challenges below, not with despair but with the courage and hope of someone who had seen the world from above and knew there was beauty beyond the strife. As dawn's first light seeped through the curtains of her modest room, Adanna awoke, her heart lighter than it had been in days. The dream, vivid and empowering, was a beacon guiding her through the storm, a reminder that sometimes, one must rise above to see the path ahead clearly. Adanna's newfound peace was fragile, a delicate shell that threatened to shatter with each gust of village gossip. Compelled by her vivid dream and the unresolved tensions swirling around her, she sought out the senior father, hoping his wisdom would guide her through the murk of rumors and whispered accusations. The aged priest greeted her in the quiet solitude of his study, a room lined with ancient texts and the faint scent of incense. He motioned for her to sit, his eyes reflecting a blend of concern and sorrow. "Father, I need to know the truth," Adanna began, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. "Is what they say about Berko true? Did he really lead such a scandalous life before his return?" The senior father sighed, his hands clasped tightly as if holding the weight of his next words. "My child, it pains me to confirm that the rumors you've heard aren't baseless fantasies. Berko was indeed involved with several young women during his time away from Umutada. His actions were regrettable, and they have cast long shadows over his intentions now." Adanna felt a chill as her hopes dissolved, replaced by a cold, hard disappointment. Why would he lie, pretending to be something he's not? Perhaps Berko returned to Umutada seeking redemption, hoping to escape the errors of his past, the priest explained, his voice tinged with a sad wisdom. "Sometimes, we believe that changing our skies will change our souls." He wanted to start anew, and perhaps he thought concealing his past was the only way to truly break from it. The walls were inching closer, trapping her in a web of deceit. And the children, the woman who claims they are his, is that true as well? Adanna's eyelids fluttered shut, a fragile barrier against the harsh truth she feared would spill forth, as she braced herself against the inevitable revelations that might shatter her world.